Turning now to page A143, Down East Correctional Facility. Down East has two initiatives. One brings the federal revenue down in line, back down to like $500, because, like I said, the adult side we're having very limited federal revenues on. And the other one is to move the unit manager from Down East to the Maine State Prison. When we did the minimums, we gave them all an assistant director that they didn't have, and we took away the unit managers as the unit managers become vacant. Again, it's one of the three positions we need to get to Maine State Prison to try to open up that unit. So they didn't lose any staff on this one because we gave them an assistant director instead, and then took away the unit manager once it became vacant. On A144, you have, we always call it JAG, Juvenile Planning Projects and Statistics. It's budget committee. It's the JAG group, Juvenile Justice Advisory Group. No initiatives there. As you can see, it's mostly federal funded. Again, because it's for juveniles. We're still able to draw that money down.
Thank you. I was curious about that. I noticed that's actually getting a bit of a bump up. Is that just because that program's expanding, or what? Or is it just what accounts for that?
Well, accounts for it's just the personal services line, the increases that you have in wages, benefits, workers' comp rates.
But it goes from 809 this year to 879.
Yep.
So pretty good.
But if you look across it, you'll see personal services going up, but you see all of them remaining flat.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, on A145. On A145, get Juvenile Community Corrections. This is our, what we call juvenile probation and parole. They do a lot of pre-adjudicated work as well as post. These are the gatekeepers for getting in and out of our juvenile facilities. They have no new initiatives. Other than the only increases they were getting, again, are in the personal services line.
Yes, excuse me, I'm sorry, Senator Valentino.
Thank you very much. If there's no new initiatives, how come we're going from the legislative count from 80 to 78?
We were able to do that by moving positions by financial order in the FY15 budget. We had that language last year to allow, as well as this year, to allow us to move positions by financial order from one account to another.
I thought if positions were moved, like in the supplemental budget, then they had to be added back in or showed in the biennial budget.
I believe we have the, I'll say it too loudly, the only luxury of a department right now to be able to move positions and all by financial order.
You're the only department, so you can add as many positions?
No, we can move them around
You can move them around.
within the same fund. So if I took 2 out of the general fund here, I put 2 somewhere else.
Okay, where are the corresponding two showing?
I would have to go back and look at
Yeah,
it.
it just is hard when you don't have an initiative to show, and you're taking 2 people out, what the amount is, and then showing the corresponding page where you're showing that they're being added to. So there's another line out here that, again, a budget that shows no initiatives, but it just shows 2 more people in it?
Yeah, and actually, even if you went back to Down East, it had gone down by from 59 to 53 without initiatives.
What page was that?
Like Down East Correctional shows a change in initiative headcount. Charleston Correctional shows a change in headcount. We'll have to get.
So where are those 7 people?
We'll map them out for you. Some of them we just gave up to fund other positions we wanted. So
And you just do this all by financial?
all by financial, it comes to your committee.
I don't believe we approve financial orders. I believe we look at them, but we don't approve.
Like they would have come last fall anyway. So I'm not sure who got them. You're right, you would have looked at them. you know, we can try to get that map out for you, and show you what happened to all of them. I believe we keep
For
that.
all of them, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Do you want all funds or just general fund?
I want to know all the personnel that
All-
you've been shifting around from
Okay.
financial
Okay.
orders and where they are being taken from and where they're showing up.
All right, or if we eliminate them.
Or if you eliminate it, yes.
Okay, we can get that for you.
Representative Schmidt and
Thank-
then Senator Gates.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Along those same lines, is the moving around of these positions the reason why we have an increase in the personal services, yet a minusing of personnel?
No, the increase in personal services has to do with the 1% raise we got, getting the steps and merits back, changes in workers' comp, changes in health insurance.
And the two positions that were shifted, do you know what those positions, like were they the same kind of position that was from the juvenile correctional facility versus where they were moved to? Like
Not necessarily, but Long Creek increased from 159 to 164. I know those 5 positions were JPW.
Thank you.
Senator Gates.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, I'm just a little confused. Maybe for the next time we have a chance to discuss this or discuss it with Commissioner Rosen. I think other departments, don't get me wrong, do shift people mid-budget by financial order, but then positions go back where they were, so it's the baseline, so we deal with it in the next budget in terms of initiative. I thought. And if that's true, then probably ought to be the same for the Department of Corrections as well. Maybe we can help.
Okay. Our next initiative is on page A146, Long Creek Youth Development. Long Creek actually has 3 initiatives here. The first one is moving a educational specialist and office associate from Department of Education to us. We put the head count in here. We've been waiting for the printed bill to know what the amount is because we didn't calculate them, so we don't know what the increase is going to be. It's going to be in federal funds for money they're currently spending. With the supervisory reasons, they find it easier for us to have the positions and oversee them because they're at our facility. So there'll actually be 2 for Long Creek and 2 for Mountain View. Our next initiative actually increases our federal grants up a little bit by $25,000 a year based on what we're expecting for revenue from, basically it's all from DOE coming through for the juvenile side. The third initiative transfers a teacher position from Long Creek to Maine State Prison. They did analysis on what they needed for teachers. We still left them plenty, but we're moving this one to the Maine State Prison again so that we can open up that other unit. And they did increase their headcount by 5. Our next one is Mountain View. They decreased their headcount by 7, as you can see there. But they are getting 2 positions from the Department of Education this time, the office associate and the educational specialist that are currently DOE positions. So when you do DOE's budget, you should see them coming out of their budget and going into office. On A149, this Office of Victim Services. Again, small unit. They're responsible for notifying victims when furloughs are authorized, when somebody's getting released, somebody has questions about restitution. They're our liaison with the community for that purpose. They have no new initiatives this year. On A150, Parole Board, no new initiatives, just under $5,000. It will probably remain there, and this is for 1 quarterly meeting a month, which is what they're allowed in statute. If they don't use it, it goes back to the general fund. Until we get to the point where we no longer have anybody in facilities on parole, we can have parole hearings, or we don't have people on the adult community side who've been paroled that may violate. So at some point in the future, this will go away, because parole went away in 1974, 76, 76, wasn't it? 76? Okay. That's what I thought it was too. So it's a small amount, it's for the per diems, for the parole members, to get to the hearings. And that's all we use it for. And if they don't have 4 meetings, it'll go back to the general fund, but I can't predict that they will or they won't have.
How many people we still have in parole?
Inside the facilities?
Yeah, or outside?
Four inside.
How many of them?
I don't know that
Just
number.
curious.
I'll see if we can get that for you. I know we have 4 left in. We had 5, but 1 passed away. The next one is our prisoner boarding account, also on page A150. This is money that we pay county jails if they hold any of our prisoners. Like currently, we're paying 2 bridges in Cumberland County their marginal cost rate to hold some of our prisoners, especially female prisoners right now, who happen to put in county jails because we're so over capacity. But it also works if, if we have a need in an area, we can basically pay for beds. And that amount has shrunk a lot from back in the days when I was the budget finance director here. It used to be 3 times that. We don't use the counties anywhere near like we used to use them. That's probably because Maine State Prison opened. We didn't need to use the county jails as much. On A151, Southern Maine Reentry Center, this is our facility that's currently in Alfred. As you can see, it's got a head count of 20. No new initiatives for it. The only increases are coming in personal services. A152 has the Maine State Prison on it. It has 2 initiatives with it. The Maine State Prison, for anyone who doesn't realize, is in Warren, Maine. It's our only maximum security facility in the state of Maine. If you haven't had an opportunity to tour that, I'm delighted to make sure you can. It is our biggest facility. It's a new facility, opened in 2002, February 2002 even. We went from Thomaston to Warren. We were able to double the amount of inmates we have. I think we did it with 5 additional staff. So if we become a much more efficient facility by being able to go out of the old block style that we had in Thomaston to the more direct supervision model that we do now. The 2 initiatives here, one is to bring down federal revenues. The other one is to move in those 3 positions, the one from down east, the one from Long Creek, and the one from Charleston, so that we can have to open up that pod.
Pretty quiet, isn't it?
Nice. And I think that does it for initiatives for the Department of Corrections. We do have some language, though. The language, which we have on page 3. It's out on page 3. The first one is in Part C. It's the language Department of Education put in to move those positions from Department of Education to Long Creek and Mountain View. And then in Part II, there you go. I have mine separated out, so I don't have other departments on mine, so I'm at an advantage, I guess. Part II is for overtime, so that we can move money to fund overtime wherever the need is within the account, within the same fund. So we can't cross between general fund and federal fund, so we can't take other special revenue into industries that have to be within the same fund. This language has been in the budget for at least a decade, if not longer. I'm quite sure it was longer than that, because I'm quite sure I started putting it in many more years ago than that. But just allows us to be able to expend that overtime account. Or if we have an urgent need somewhere, to be able to pay it if we have vacancies in another account, to be able to pay overtime expenses.
Representative Jeanette?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just, not on that particular section, but I'm just getting a little confused. These crossed out sections,
That means they're being eliminated.
they're being eliminated.
Yes, and the underlined one is new, like in Part C.
So if there's a section that's being crossed out, but yet there's underlined language referencing new language, I'm confused.
Yeah, unfortunately, you guys have all the language. I have just hours.
Just want a clarification, thank you.
That's fine.
Senator Valentino?
You said that the language on part II
Yeah.
has been in the budget.
For at least a decade, I'm thinking probably close to 2 decades now.
Okay. I guess I'm just wondering if it's already in law,
It's not.
it's not in law.
That's the problem. We could put this in statute. We could move it out of here and put it in statute, and then we wouldn't have to keep revisiting it every year. But right now, the biennial budget language only lasts 2 years.
Okay, so this has never been
Put in statute.
talked about putting into statute?
No.
Okay.
We're certainly open to that idea. We have a departmental bill that hasn't come out of the reviser's office. If you want us to consider that, we'd consider it.
Thank you.
And then part JJ is our language that allows us any unused personal services to carry in our capital account. This is where I told you I sent over the list of what's funded and unfunded needs are in our capital account. We're sitting on about 197 million of unfunded capital needs. So and when I told you in January, we're looking at around 6 million this year possibly going into that account. The first 2.5 million has to go to Charleston for the wastewater treatment center. That is a critical need, and we bought some time so we would fund it coming in July 1st. The next 1.2 million of it is going to go to the Maine State Prison. They're having problems with the top wire fence. So we've got to take care of that issue. So of the 6 million, there's 2/3 of it before we even deal with any boilers or roofs. And our facilities are getting older. We're getting to the point where we're going to need to invest in those things. We've been doing them on an emergency repair, which is why you'll see on the current money, I didn't allocate all of it out, because if I have a boiler go down today, I need some mechanism for which to pay it. And that list, because every time you get a list, it gets outdated because projects come and go on it, and they change. But we do have a lot of older facilities that we have to keep running every day. All right, KK is that language that gives us authority to move positions by account. This allows us to line up our positions with our current needs, because in the Department of Corrections, we can't tell you that our needs are always going to be in one area. Without this language, we would be back in front of you with the supplementals moving all sorts of positions around. This just allows us to move by financial order, and the financial order would come here. The appropriations, not from the justice, but appropriations. But we certainly can supply you with a copy as well if you'd like.
Senator Valentino?
Thank you very much. Would you have a list of all the financial orders that have gone through for the last 2 years?
Yes,
You would. Thank you. Would you be able to provide us with that list?
I'm sure we can.
All the
All the
basically,
new positions?
all the financial.
All of
how
them.
you- Yeah.
Okay.
The date, the reason, and the amount for the last 2 years.
I think we can do that.
Thank you.
Part LL allows us to transfer all other for food, fuel, and utilities, so that if we have a spike, like we did this year in natural gas, it allows us to move funds from one account to another. We have natural gas at 2 facilities right now. We have wood at one and oil at the others. So we're always looking at different ways in which we can reduce our utility costs. And we need some flexibility to be able to move funds when, like last year, when oil went way up. So this language allows us to do that. And our last piece of language is in part WWW. This goes way back to the administration account, the elimination of the public service manager 2. So we took it was an appointed position, so we needed to take it out of statute here to eliminate the appointed position as well. Otherwise, we'd eliminate the head count and still have on the books an appointed position with no head count. So this just cleans up that language. We Actually,
Any
that's
other
all we have.
questions for DOC, Representative Jeanette?
I'd like to go back to Part JJ, if you don't mind. Just a quick question. So the language change that we're wanting to move the unexpended personal services to the capital expenditures category, how much, like, what is the current process now? Where does that money, does it go right back to your general fund? Like, how much on average is left over from personal services, and then where does it go down?
Well, right now, we have language carried in this account. We're expecting 6 million more this year to go into this account, but without this language, we wouldn't have it for the next biennium.
But where would that 6 million go?
It would go back to general fund.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we are 95% general fund agency.
Thank you.
Senator Trusowski?
Thank you. For the purpose of our workshop, you could bring in a list of what kind of capital improvements we've done to all our facilities for the last 5 years, and what we have to look forward to, so we have this money for.
And we actually have provided you with the list.
All right.
Yeah, and it has all the outstanding projects at the end.
I keep on hearing you mention all these old facilities that we have. My mind keeps on poking at all the new facilities we have. 10 years.
Well, it is, but at 10, 12 years, we're starting to have issues with some of the electronics and the rubber roofs.
Absolutely.
Long Creek is having problems with their rubber roofs, so I mean, even our new facilities need ongoing maintenance, and the Bureau of General Services tends not to have much capital money, and we don't tend to get much, so this is a way in which we can fund our projects.
Right,
That's why you keep doing this, yes.
4 years.
Yep. You'll see some equipment on there that we purchased. We replaced a 1952 tractor. You know, to say that our criteria for giving out capital is health and safety or efficiency. And I know there's a lot more projects that don't fit those, but that's our criteria for giving it out. It has to be health and safety, and that could be for the inmates, it could be for the staff. Health and safety and efficiency. So replacing a 1952 tractor that you couldn't get parts for, certainly an efficiency. Because, especially at Bolduc, Bolduc is what we call the farm program, and I reported up to criminal justice what we grew in crops down there this year. If we're going to run a farm of that size, we need some equipment to run it.
Well, my concern is really has to do a lot with, I know the electronics are worn down. They're getting older, that's a safety issue.
Yeah.
Well, they may be how it balances out over a 5-year period, what we're doing, how we're doing it. Yeah,
Okay, we can only do it for as long as we've had this language. So we'll see, we can see how far back we can go.
right. Thank you.
Now, will you be addressing DOC or DOC was up next?
BOC's up next? I don't know who you have to represent the BOC.
Okay.
They
Any
have
other
no
questions-
executive director now,
Any
so.
other questions for DOC? Okay.
Okay, actually, that's Scott Ferguson, our service center director. He says 7 COs is about $500,000, 14 COs $1 million that you could buy with the overtime money.
Say that again, please.
For $1 million, you could get 14 correctional officers. $500,000, you could get 7. Okay.
So, okay, well said, I think.
Okay.
Thank you. 49. Now we got Board of Corrections.
Again, I'm Dr. Joe Fitzpatrick, Commissioner for the Department of Corrections. I don't have something prepared to address the Board of Corrections. I'm certainly willing to field questions.
It was on my list, and I'm beautifully going by my list.
At this point, I think as everyone knows, there's a lot of discussion about the Board of Corrections and where we're going with that. I think those are dynamic and active discussions at the moment. I don't think anything has been decided.
Senator Valentino.
Thank you very much. Do you know if anyone was invited to the Board of Corrections to come before us today? I mean, you're not prepared to speak on their budget. Was anybody invited to come speak on it?
I don't know that they were.
So nobody's invited. Okay, thank you.
Representative Powell.
I guess my whole question when this happened, do we have a budget from the Board of Corrections?
I'll give you my understanding of that, and again, I'll be really clear that I'm sort of late to this game and have not been at the table regarding the Board of Corrections. My understanding is currently there is and Scott Ferguson might be able to address some of these issues specifically since he's worked with the Board of Corrections, he knows the finances inside and out. We have one quarterly payment left in reserve, that in reserve account, as I understand it, that will be paid out in April, and again, Scott can give you details. That's already proportioned and mandated and will go accordingly. There's supplemental funding that's going to be going forward. The details of how that funding will get proportioned, I think is still a question. But again, if you'd like Scott to speak to the finances, I think he'd be able to do that if that would be helpful.
Any questions or not? Representative Jeanette?
So I guess I'm confused. The jails don't need any money? Like, well, I guess I'm confused. Like, why budget's not being presented to us when there is a Board of Corrections today, right? And you oversee, I guess I'm confused with that.
I think the current, and again, I'll invite Scott up here because I think the current situation is the money is already allotted in proportion to go forward in terms of the quarterly payment. I don't think there exists technically, my understanding again, a Board of Corrections at this point because I think roughly 6-7 weeks ago, they felt that they've become sort of null and void in terms of being able to fulfill their mission. I think there's a current discussion going on as to what the future of a board will be if there is a board. I think if there is a board established or reestablished, then I would imagine that the whole budget issue would resurface.
Representative Laser?
Well, we have the budget document we have has a proposed budget for the corrections. I don't know, it's a little bit less of a functioning board. I'm not sure that there's anybody different.
Correct, that's really the issue with the Board of Corrections, is the Department of Corrections does not oversee the Board of Corrections. They have their own executive director who left. The board itself is not functioning. I'm sure that probably they got invites to come. We would not get an invite for them because we do not oversee the board. We just expend their money for them. We are just a fiduciary for them, sending out money.
Representative Powell?
Okay, so when this discussion was being had, this was my concern, was that we were going to get to a point where we were looking at next year's budget. And I remember sitting with some people and saying, who's going to present us that budget? And I think we're here. And I think maybe nobody's here to present, but we're going to need in our area. I mean, we have money that, or decisions to make, but at some point, either the state's going to be giving money to the counties in some form, or not. I mean, I realize that's discussions we had, but what we had done in the motion that was taken here was eliminate the Board of Corrections until July 1st. So, not knowing what we're going forward in doing and having a budget that was apparently in front of us with some dollar amounts, that we have something possibly to work off and and knowing which way we're gonna, I mean, we just need a little bit more than nobody's here to present a budget. We have decisions to make, and we have possibly state monies that need to go to counties moving forward, and we need to figure out who's gonna work that end of it between now and July 1st.
And I think part of the discussion legally is as the board reached a certain number of members, can they function as a board? I think that's been the big question that everyone's trying to sort out. I don't pretend to be an attorney, so I can't tell you the answer to that question, but I can say that I've had conversations with Joel Murray, one of the members, and on the resignation of the executive director. I think the feeling is that currently they're good through April. There will be a supplemental funding to be given out to the counties. The most recent language I've seen has talked about receivership potentially overseeing that process. If that goes forward, then that would be the process. I'm just not sure whether they were invited or who would invite them. As Jody says, we don't have any authority over the Board of Corrections. Right now, in statute, in terms of the bed space within the county jails, I'll be very straightforward. On paper, I have some authority, but quite honestly, the county jails are managing their own beds at this point in time.
So follow up. So is it my understanding that your authority might be limited because the language hasn't actually made it through the building? The bill
Yeah.
hasn't.
I think the current language, the current situation and language is very limiting. I think part of the struggle of the Board of Corrections, again, once removed, watching the Board of Corrections over the last several years, there hasn't been language that's empowered it to move in one direction or another. I just think that's.
So I guess what I'm asking, are your hands kind of tied because the bill that was worked on in this and voted on in this committee, appropriations, has not made it through the House and the Senate?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Zosky, please. If you would do me a favor, turn on the other microphone. You tend to talk that direction. I can't hear a word you're saying. Mike isn't picking it up. So if you, yeah.
Haven't been
Thank you.
Senate long enough to hear my voice.
Now that you're using your outside voice, yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I'll speak up. My understanding of the Board of Corrections, and it seems like there's been, Joel Mary has been up here almost every day for quite a while now. I'm surprised they're not here today. But am I wrong? I know that you don't control it, but doesn't the chief executive, isn't that part of his
I can't honestly answer.
responsibility?
I can't answer that it's his responsibility.
Okay. That was my understanding, but regardless, there is no excuse for them not being here today, and I would hope that when they come to criminal justice, that they do show up for our budget hearing on Wednesday, in case you're listening. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
A lifeline is.
Let's see.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind the interruption, just to clarify the posture that we're currently in. We're obviously holding public hearings, biennial public hearings on all the components of the governor's budget. And what you have before you now is page 154 and page 155 of the governor's 2016-2017 biennial budget, which is the budget proposal related to the State Board of Corrections. So this component of the budget proposal obviously relates to current law as is in place. So what you see is a proposal that is essentially a status quo proposal with the same head count, personal services, obviously with the personal service adjustments that you've been seeing throughout all the rest of the components of the budget, the increased costs in 16 and 17. And the placeholder for the electronic monitoring fund of the State Board of Corrections, and the continuation on page 155. So just to help perhaps clarify, what you have before you is the funding proposed for the Board of Corrections for 16-17 as it currently exists in statute for 16 and 17 with no new initiatives. Clearly what the Commissioner is speaking to in the general discussion that you're having is what is to become of the board, what is the policy decision, what is the future. But in terms of the posture of the current biennial budget, this is the funding request that's included in the governor's budget.
Thank you. Representative Fallon, please.
So we could expect that moving forward in building a budget and working on the bills that we have, that this is the money the governor would have proposed to move forward from state to county.
This is the funding that is being proposed in the current budget, which is essentially a continuation of the baseline from 15 moving through 16 and 17. Clearly, the legislature, the policy committee, the appropriations committee restructures, comes up with changes, modifications to existing law. You would be modifying the 16-17 budget. But I'm only here to help clarify that there is a proposal, there is funding for the existing structure.
Thank you, Gina.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioner. I need you to clarify, I guess, what I think is a misrepresentation I just heard. It was said that you would be able to speak now if we have new legislation that was passed and that this committee is holding this up. Now, my understanding is that the problem is that there are 3 vacancies on the Board of Corrections. It has nothing to do with our committee holding up the bill. We're trying to resolve this issue, that if the executive branch had simply appointed those people, then there would not have been a problem. Am I wrong?